There are several different roller coasters that just about everyone loves. You can easily tell which ones these are because they always have long lines and are generally praised by enthusiasts and park goers alike. Then there are the ones who aren't loved quite as much. You can also tell which ones these are because their lines are short or they're just walk-ons, and are typically trashed by said enthusiasts and park guests. But today, I wanted to give those coasters some attention, as these are 10 of the most hated roller coasters in the world. Just a quick disclaimer, all of these are still in operation today. I'll probably make a list of the most hated defunct coasters in a future video, but all of these you can still find in operation today. So with that being said, let's begin. Number 10. Gouderix at Parc Asterix in France. This Vekoma looping coaster opened in 1989 and was Vekoma's answer to the 7-inversion Aero Mega Loopers of the late 80s and early 90s. It's also one of 2 coasters with a butterfly element, the other being Blue Hawk at Six Flags Over Georgia. It has the stats and the layout, but it does not have the comfortable ride experience to go along with it. Gouderix is said to have a cranium-smashing experience that will leave you begging for less. Parc Asterix did a complete retrack on this in 2013 and have done other refurbishments in previous years to help with this issue, but it's still painful and hated enough to find a spot on this list. Number 9. Pirates Hideaway at Casino Pier in New Jersey. This coaster was manufactured by Wisdom Rides, an American company most well known for making kiddie and family coasters. I decided to leave off family and kiddie coasters from this list, but Pirates Hideaway is listed as a thrill attraction on RCDB's website, so I decided to include it. At first glance, it may remind you of a pretzel dark ride with the theming on the outside, but don't be fooled. It starts with a spiral lift and a couple of drops before it gets to the indoor section. Here you go through several harsh dips and turns that will slam you into the sides of the train and into the restraints. Now on top of that, there is zero theming on the inside, so there's not even anything pretty to look at. I personally have not ridden this coaster, but it appears as a pointless, terrible coaster that looks way better than it rides. Number 8. Starflyer at Star City in the Philippines. This is an unusual ride, as it's the only one of its kind left in operation. It's an inverted coaster, but not by any company you would expect to build an invert. It's not a B&M, it's not a Vekoma SLC, and not even an Intamin. No, this was built by the infamous Italian manufacturer Pinfari. In terms of track length, this is the world's smallest inverted coaster with less than 1,200 feet of track. And with this being a Pinfari, the ride has an abundance of bad transitions, jerky turns, and an incredible amount of headbanging on the hard over-the-shoulder restraints. Star City was badly damaged by a fire in October of 2019, as their indoor arcade was completely destroyed, but their outdoor attractions came away mostly unscathed. However, I'm pretty sure most people wouldn't have been too upset if Starflyer was completely destroyed by the fire. Number 7. Ninja at Six Flags St. Louis in Missouri. By anyone's standards, this ride is pretty bad. It started off as an Aero looping coaster, but they fell into bankruptcy midway through construction, and Vekoma came in to finish the project. With 2 companies known for making rough steel coasters building this thing, it was doomed to be one of the most painful coasters in existence. Turns out, it sure as hell is. The Sidewinder in the first half literally tries to break your neck, while the rest of the ride is really jerky and full of bad track profiling. I will admit, the corkscrews give some decent hang time, and my ride in May of 2019 was halfway tolerable. But that doesn't erase the awful memories I have with this monstrosity. And it's really a wonder why Six Flags keeps this hunk of garbage around. Number 6. Corkscrew at Cedar Point in Ohio. This was one of the country's first ever looping coasters. It opened in 1976 as the first coaster with 3 inversions. This ride looks spectacular with its corkscrews going over the midway, but everything from the trains to the transitions are uncomfortable with this thing. For such a short ride, it's very uncomfortable, and it's hard to find a coaster more outdated than this. Even though it looks pretty, it's a hell of a lot better to look at than it is to ride. Like what you see so far? Feel free to subscribe and hit that bell button to stay tuned anytime I upload new videos. Number 5. Vipère at La Ronde, more infamously known as Green Lantern First Flight at Six Flags Magic Mountain in California. The dreaded American Zack Spin. I only included this on the list because it was supposed to open up in its new location in 2020 before the COVID-19 pandemic ruined the world. But during its stay in California, this coaster, made by the highly praised Intamin, was known as one of the most painful coasters to ever exist. Supposedly the Zack Spins in Europe are actually pretty good, but the one we were disgraced with here in America was this pile. It initially was well received by guests, but in 2012, multiple delays occurred where the trains would enter the station facing upside down, and the ride ops had to flip them back upright, so modifications were made. Zack Spins feature trains with fins on the side of the train, but extra metal was added to the sides of the trains, filling in the gaps between the fins to make a solid shape. This extra metal weighed the cars down, and it caused them to flip less frequently, but this caused the coaster to be both boring and torturous at the same time. It was painful, uncomfortable, and it wasn't fun, and I truly believe this ride was dangerous, as it seemed like I broke every bone on my back and burst a blood vessel in my brain after riding it. Hopefully La Ronde can implement modified trains to where the cars flip more frequently so it's a less painful ride. It may only be at number 5 on this list, but it truly is the worst roller coaster I've ever ridden. Number 4. Anaconda at Kings Dominion in Virginia. It's hard to believe an Aero Looper from 1991 could be more poorly received than the previous coaster on this list. Fix that. It's hard to believe anything could be worse than Green Lantern, but here we are. Does Anaconda really deserve such an awful reputation? In my opinion, yes and no. I don't think the ride is rough, but I'm lucky enough to clear the over-the-shoulder restraints because of my height. However, this layout is just plain stupid. Starting with the very shallow drop into an underwater tunnel, which is pretty cool. Then it goes through the first 2 inversions, and it awkwardly bumps into the mid-course brakes, and the rest of the ride, aside from the corkscrews, is full of bad aero transitions. It just wanders around with jerky turns, and despite having a great setting over the water, the ride and layout is completely pointless, and it's a very outdated ride. Quite honestly, it's kind of an embarrassment for the park. Despite the ride not beating me up, a lot of people think it is rough and uncomfortable, so I had to include it on the list. Number 3. Zamperla Valairs at various parks across the globe. This may be possibly the worst coaster model to ever exist. I love flying coasters, but these are the epitome of a pile of hot trash. There's 9 of these out there, and the only one I've ridden is Time Warp at Canada's Wonderland, and that delivered one of the worst experiences I've ever had on a coaster. And according to people who've ridden other Valairs, the other ones are equally as bad. These have to have the weirdest trains I've ever seen. You're basically put in these metal cages before you flop into a flying position. It's basically a claustrophobic's nightmare. Once you leave the spiral lift, your head will be pounding against the restraints, and the only thing you can do is to plant your face on the chin rest and pray for the ride to be over. But given my awful experience on Time Warp, I'm hesitant to try any other Zamperla Valairs ever again. Number 2. The Big Apple Coaster at the New York Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada. The final operating Togo coaster in North America. Supposedly the Togos in Japan are pretty good, but the ones we were disgraced with here in America range from bad to ugly to this. First up, it takes forever to reach the top of the lift hill, and then you have 2 huge drops as it winds from the back of the hotel to the front. Then you go through the ride's only 2 inversions, and to finish things off, you have a bunch of bunny hills that deliver absolutely nothing. It's a coaster that hits high speeds with bad transitions, kind of similar to Desperado at Buffalo Bills, but even worse. This coaster truly makes aero transitions look genius. Plus, this has the worst restraints of any coaster in the world. Lap bars and these stupid shoulder pads that are very hard and make you feel extremely pinned down and enclosed. And given the abundance of bad transitions on this ride, your head or neck, if you can clear the shoulder pads, will go flying into the restraints every time you hit a bad transition, and it will hurt. It's a rough, pointless, and terrible coaster that hopefully gets taken out soon, and North America will no longer have any coasters by this terrible Japanese coaster manufacturer. Before I get to number 1, quick shout out to Peter of Theme Park Crazy for the inspiration for this list. He has an abundance of great content on his channel, and if you haven't checked out his channel, feel free to click the link in the description. I wanted to give a shout out to some honorable mentions. Blue Hawk at Six Flags Over Georgia was pretty despised by just about everyone under its previous name, Ninja, but it was renovated with new vest restraints, a new paint job, a new name, and now it's a halfway decent ride, so I decided to cut it some slack. Viper at Six Flags Magic Mountain has gotten a lot of love from enthusiasts recently after its refurbishment in 2018, and it's supposedly running very smooth now, so I'll need to get the Magic Mountain and reevaluate the ride soon. Wildcat at Lake Compounce is one of, if not the absolute worst wooden coaster I've ever experienced, but given that it's a classic Woody from 1927, there are some fans of this ride who want this coaster to be preserved over time. Finally, Vekoma boomerangs may have been cloned all across the world, and some of them are definitely worse than others, but some boomerangs are fairly tolerable, and dare I say, some are even kind of fun, especially the ones with the vest restraints, which I think make a huge difference. Number 1. Vekoma SLCs at various parks across the globe. If the Zamperla Valere isn't the worst coaster model in existence, that honor has to go to the Vekoma SLC. The layout is actually pretty solid, it's just poorly executed. Most variations have these bulky over-the-shoulder restraints that come down right next to your ears, and with the multitude of bad transitions on these coasters, there is no avoiding the headbanging. Some parks have tried to fix this problem with new restraints. Six Flags New England and Morey's Piers absolutely knocked it out of the park with the vest restraints, so now these are pretty tolerable rides. T3 at Kentucky Kingdom also tried putting new restraints on it, but they failed pretty hard. It's basically a lap bar with a vest restraint, and it's a serious thigh crusher. So they eliminated the headbanging, but now it feels like your legs just got cut off. It's no wonder why SLCs are so universally despised, and it shouldn't come as a surprise that it tops this list. So there's 10 of the world's most hated roller coasters. Let me know what you think of this list in the comments below, and tell me some coasters you absolutely hate that I didn't mention, but you think should be on this list. Also be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys next time.